So much pain, warring divides. It's a shame we don't see how it can.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all.
Oh, we need to smile at each other, wish for your brother, help one another. All we need is love. Oh, we need to honor our mother, shelter our sisters, all to existence. God's help will come from above, but first we need the love.
Welcome to our last episode before Ramadan of the YFactor. It's Miran and Tasnim here today, and it's the 28th of July.
That's right, our last and most exciting episode. Ramadan, inshallah, we will still be on air during our normal time on Thursdays between Maghreb and Ishaa.
Yep, just won't be repeating on Sundays, inshallah, and it would just be taking more of a religious focus to help you increase the religious benefits and efforts basically of your Ramadan experience.
And as usual, inshallah, our episodes will be uploaded online, so if you've missed the episode or you want to have a look at the previous episode, you can hop on to our Facebook and YouTube account.
Unfortunately, we don't really have much time to cover news today due to the number of awesome interviews that we have lined up, but there was one story very much worth a mention, Tasnim.
That was the Oslo bombings, the very unfortunate and horrific bombings which have claimed the lives of
about 76 people according to news reports.
That's right. I'm pretty sure most of you have heard the news articles about the bombings in Norway.
I guess the most interesting update on that is that the bombers' lawyers have said they're going to be pleading insanity and drug.
That's right. And the interesting thing about this is his actual 1,000-page manifesto plus, which he actually posted, in which he actually describes his motivations and how he describes this act as a crusade, quote unquote, and how he's actually been planning this. And there's a lot of public commentary out there on the right-wing influence and how, you know, the neocons, not just in Norway, but in Australia, in America, have actually through the multicultural, you know...
they were saying it was like they're blogging about sort of Islamophobic sentiments.
That's right.
Through America especially.
That's right.
That's kind of his inspiration, they found. And of course they keep digging up apparently heaps of explosives and bombs in various places that he's hidden them in.
That's right. And it's actually interesting because there was an article by Irfan Yusuf and he was talking about how even in Australia, like commentators such as Andrew Bolt and stuff have those right-wing tendencies, conservatives and things like that. So
Andrew Bolt's reaction to the whole thing was so curious. I mean, he wrote an article in which he said that the bombings were actually done by Al-Qaeda and by Islamic terrorists.
Well, that was the initial reaction.
It was up there for 6 hours before it was removed. And I mean, I guess... Even
in the Sunday Telegraph in the UK had, Norway, this is your 9/11. And so at the beginning when no one had actually claimed the acts of violence, everybody jumped to the gun and just blamed the Muslims. And it's actually really interesting because a lot of commentators were like, these days terrorism has become synonymous with Islam. So they didn't even wait to see who actually committed the atrocities before
pointing the finger.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a very interesting update. I think, you know, on our Facebook page, let us know your thoughts, guys, because it's a horrific tragedy. You know, violence and terrorism and killing innocents in the name of anything is disgusting. It's repulsive.
Yep.
But I think most of all, this has shown that terrorism does not belong to a faith. It does not belong to a certain people. It's just lunatics and they shouldn't be forgiven.
And just with that mention, we should probably also give a mention to our brothers and sisters up in Syria and the other nations that are still undergoing their violent protests and, you know, against their regimes. And I guess that's going to be carrying on through Ramadan, which will be all
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honestly help them because we struggle here and, you know, we start at 5.
But what are we complaining
that's
about
right,
really
that's
in
right.
comparison? Okay, well with that, we're going to take a short break and then jump straight into our
Just before you take a short break, some interesting news. The cost of bananas has gone up by 470% since the global financial crisis in Australia. So next time you go, if you crave a banana milkshake, think again.
I'm guessing bananas must be really special to you, Tasnim, to have held up the show like that. Personally, I'm more into mangoes myself. But anyways, now we really are going to take a short break. And after that, well, stay tuned. You're listening to The YFactor with Miran and Tasnim on 87.6 FM.
Heroes never wore tights or appeared on cartoon channels. They had long beards and kept clothes above the ankles. No combing the streets like beasts at night looking for thieves. My heroes fought their egos and narrated a hadith. And some of my heroes were once bad guys too. Baby killers and highway robbers, if you only knew what they knew. Cause you gotta know a lie in order to recognize the truth. So what's the point of knowing truth if you can't back it up with proof? So to prove my heroes were united by a single point of view, why else would they choose to go against what their fathers used to do unless they knew that paradise was worth being abused? The best of views if only you choose to walk a mile in the shoes. Oh, what I wouldn't do to kick it with Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Listen to him recite the Quran, sad to go into ruku. Yeah, that would be cool. But me and Hamza, we would kick it old school. Joke about the Jahiliyyah, silly things they used to do. If I could pick my own crew, Salman al-Farsi would have to be in it. An honest seeker of truth. May Allah bless his spirit. Have tea with Juleibib, cookies with Anas ibn Malik. Anything to pick their brains and gain a better understanding. Could you imagine taking a class with Abdullah ibn Abbas? A scholar by the age of 10, just a boy amongst the men. And if I had one friend, it would be Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Someone to hold you down and to really represent. When Sumayya held her chin to her killers, did she think we would name our little girls after her to teach them strength? And who cares about these rappers? We got Hassan ibn Thabit. Dude was sick with the flow. Can't believe you didn't know that Zain was a slave who became one of praise. Lived the American dream when America was cream. Umar bin Khattab was a G. Held it down for this deed. A real Superman made the devils cross the street. And if I ever had beef, I would call him Khalid bin Walid. He was a ride or die homie amongst the cellar for Salihin. And if I just close my eyes, man, I could almost see Bilal amongst the cold morning breeze. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. For surely Salah is much better than sleep like Abu.
The YFactor.
Welcome back from the break, guys. Joining us in the studio is Boonaa Mohammed, spoken word artist from Canada. Welcome to the show, Mohammed.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Boonaa, what is the aim of your spoken word pieces?
Well, I try and use my poetry as a means of, teaching people about Islam and trying to give youth an alternative to music or any type of other cultural substance that they deal with, which may not be completely halal to that extent. So at the same time, trying to call people to the message of Islam, and not particularly just Muslims, because everyone's free to listen. I mean, it's free on YouTube. So just allowing people to absorb art and that kind of culture with a wholesome message at the end, inshallah.
Okay, and so where do you get this motivation for your pieces from?
Well, a lot of the times I kind of look at the situation of the ummah and things which are occurring in my everyday life. Like, maybe I run into a Muslim who feels bad about their identity, or I come across, people who are afraid that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never forgive them for their sins, and, different circumstances that kind of propel me to write poems and kind of speak on behalf of the people who feel voiceless, right? The people who don't necessarily have an outlet to express their feelings and anxieties. I try and do that for them, alhamdulillah.
So you feel like it's really from the heart? It's based on your experience?
I feel like it's also responsibility, right? Like somebody who has access to an audience, you should say something which is truthful. And at the same time, I try and use my work as a form of ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to try and be, out there in terms of seeking Allah's pleasure and calling people to the message of Islam and Tawheed, so that on the day of judgment I can come forth and be proud of the work I've done through art, which is something that I guess not everyone can say. Speaking of art, there's a lot of contentious issues in the Muslim community. For example, did you make a conscious decision to do spoken word and not hip-hop, for example? I definitely did not, because of the fact that I used to do hip-hop. So I used to be a rapper. Really? Yeah, I was definitely involved in the hip-hop community for quite a long time. And, a lot of brothers kind of approached me, and sisters would just, they just would kind of advise me to that extent, saying, brother, and people have their different opinions surrounding music. And if anything, I would say, put all the, fiqh or any other kind of Islamic rulings aside in terms of instruments. Just the sheer fact that music, for the most part, is kind of a waste of time. Like, the benefit you receive from it is very little, if any. It's more just like a mind-numbing tool. So the fact that I wasn't saying anything meaningful in terms of, what is really important in this world, ultimately the next world as well, I decided that, music probably wasn't the best route, and it was better if I just stuck to my roots, which was, storytelling in general. So storytelling can occur in hip-hop or just in poetry. It's just the medium that you used, but the message stays the same.
So you're speaking of your context, you're Canadian. Can you tell us some information about the local conditions in Canada with the Muslim community?
You know what, subhanAllah, amongst my travels and everywhere I go, you find the Muslim Ummah is very much the same, especially because we're all kind of Westerners, quote unquote, right? So you have issues of identity. You have sisters who may not feel completely secure wearing hijab. You have brothers who maybe not, don't want to wear a beard because they feel as though they're going to be stigmatized. You have people who are just kind of dealing with the balance of, this world and school and work and responsibilities versus, being in the masjid and being amongst the Muslims, and, just that constant fear also that everybody's judging us and that we're all, under the microscope of the society, and how do we present Islam without seeming too extreme, and it's the same struggle everywhere you go. So alhamdulillah, I think the situation, and there's a revival amongst Muslims everywhere you go, in the West, even in the East, places where people may have come from, they see that Islam is spreading more and becoming more popular. So alhamdulillah, just trying to be a part of that movement.
And how you were saying people fear being judged. So we've heard people speaking about criticizing, how sometimes you refer to the Sahaba as G's. So how do you deal with criticism like that, and what's your justification for it?
Well, I think, I did come across just a very select few people. In all my time writing and performing, especially Islamic work, very few times have I come across people that have strong concerns or strong disagreements with something that I've said or done.
Which is rare in our community.
Yeah, which is rare, because most artists are under constant criticism, right? Especially you talk to Brother Ali, comedy is one of those things that's always out there. But alhamdulillah, because poetry has a significance in the history of Islam as well, because poetry is very relevant, people don't really give me as much slack. I know one comment that people made was that, and one poem I have called Heroes, I kind of try to use language which is relevant to the young person to understand the context by which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would have viewed his companions, right? So when I say, and I had a conversation with some brothers actually online about this, when I say somebody's my homie, okay, in the context that I understand and use it, it's of the most honorable terms I can give somebody. It's like saying they're my really close friend. Somebody's my homie, right? If I say somebody's a G, somebody's a G meaning they have honorable characteristics. They're somebody who stand up straight, and they don't budge. They're very, precise in the people's visions and eyes. So that's the, it's like
you're contextualizing the lingo.
I'm contextualizing it, but using it in slang, which is like a complete different language for some people. So obviously, some people who don't understand the slang, or who have issues with slang in general, who feel as though it's like derogatory language, they feel as though it's like below our English language. It's like, if I were to say, a statement about the Sahaba in Chinese and Cantonese, and just because you didn't understand it, would you start bashing because of it? No. If people understand what it means, and words are just communication, right? So it's like, I can use whatever word I want, and I can mean something. If you understand it, then I've communicated correctly. But I can say, I love someone. If I say I love my mother, people might understand love to mean it may not be a strong enough emotion. You might have meant you really, really love your mother. Anyway, that's a bad example, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all about the context by which I'm using it, and the speaker, how they understand their message.
Well, speaking of intentions and context, a lot of the Muslim youth, especially when you're in high school, at uni, you start out, you want to help out with the Muslim community, you want to do dawah, you get out there. We face a lot of criticism, as you said, not just comedians, but it feels like every time you want to do something good, the Muslim community are the first to get out there and bash you for it. What's your advice to young people out there who want to make a difference, especially Islamically, but are struggling?
You know what? There was a saying by one of the Salaf, and I can't remember exactly who it was, so I won't quote it, but I'll misquote it, just paraphrase it to that extent, that, when the people, they praise too much. When they criticize too much. We are people of extremes for some reason. If people praise, because I have this issue as well, and people who are out there, you also get the praise, right? People will start praising you. Oh, brother, I became a Muslim because of you, brother. If it wasn't for you, it's like, this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People, if you did something wrong, astaghfirullah, sister, how could you do this? You're ruining the ummah. You're the one that's going to be leading us all to Jahannam. And you say, really? People are extremes both ways. If you are surely doing it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the criticism shouldn't really matter. Because ultimately, we'll know on the Day of Judgment whether or not you were sincere and successful. I'll give you an example of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, who when speaking to his people, he seemed like he was a crazy man, right? They didn't listen to him. And they refused to follow his commandments. They refused to listen and take heed of what he was saying. And he was criticized heavily because of it. But was he successful? Of course. It was a Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's an example for us to examine and realize that ultimately it's all about our intention. If that's clear and sincere, then inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for it.
So, Boonaa, in your eyes, do you think that the Muslim community lacks some creative initiatives?
Oh, big time. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we're very much stuck in our old ways. Like, people are kind of bringing their back home baggage with them and are not willing to, try out new things. And alhamdulillah, I was telling the brothers that, the first time I attended Sydney when I was here, I was introduced to this amazing event initiative called When the World Changed, which was like Quran recitation. And I just fell in love with the idea. I've tried to bring it to Canada, in fact.
Yeah.
And I just found like, wow, mashallah, the brothers here are doing something so creative. And to see that type of, ingenuity and innovation, and not like bid'ah, but you know what I mean, like innovation in the sense of doing something beautiful, taking the sunnah and the Quran, sticking to it, but also providing the community here with the reality. Because it's not like many of us and young brothers and sisters are just going to go to a lecture, sit there, absorb everything, be happy, content, go home, sit. It's like
you gotta make it interactive. You gotta make
it's like medicine. Sometimes when you're dealing with children, you give them the tasty kind of medicine. You give them the medicine that starts with a cherry or something, but it still, alhamdulillah, does the job. So I think that's what we have to look towards, and really encouraging the young brothers and sisters to, push the boundaries and not be so worried about what their parents might think or what their friends might think. If you are doing something in line with the Quran and the Sunnah and you're not violating any rules or anything of that sort, then by all means, go ahead and try it out,
Well, as an artist, Boonaa, you're speaking about pushing the boundaries and stuff, but I think many of the youth might feel like they push the boundaries in their own communities. When you get in the bigger world, right, it's the halal haram boundaries, which you said it must confine to the sharia and the sunnah and stuff. As an artist yourself, how do you balance that, especially as you said, when you get to the bling and the fame and things like that? How do you, your advice to young people out there, how do you actually maintain the halal balance?
It all comes down to intention. You really have to always ensure that your intention is in the correct place. And this is one of those things that's a lifelong battle. I don't have any specific advice as to how to maintain that, because it's something that, you'll always be struggling with till the day you die. But that's one of the tests of life, and that's why we've been created, to be tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I would advise the brothers and sisters to, always work on purifying your intentions. Always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you, to make things easy for you, to guide you to khair, to make you amongst people who want khair in their life and for this one and the next. And always be amongst righteous companions. And, if people do advise you, be open to criticism. Don't necessarily get defensive. And this is advice that I'm giving, but I suck at it myself. People give me advice. I really sometimes I have a hard time taking it. But, try to soften your heart to that type of work. And if you want to give advice to people, also use hikmah.
That's
the
right.
Prophet ﷺ was the best of advisors and the best of people for examples. And he was very, 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 very wise in the way in which he would advise people. So I advise brothers and sisters to try and do the same. And ultimately, people are people. Like, nobody's perfect. Everyone's going to make a mistake. But really and truly, it's a matter of trying your best and always working to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Inshallah. So how are you finding your stay in Australia? What are you...
Very beautiful, alhamdulillah. Although I came at a very funny time, because I'm from Canada, where it's usually cold, and I didn't know I was going to come to Sydney and it would be cold as well.
That's right.
Yeah. So
you left the summer to come
I left the summer to come to the winter, but this winter's not really that bad. This is kind of our summer anyways.
Oh, really? Gets that cold.
You guys deal in maybe wintertime is like 15, 16. Our winter goes to negative 30.
Whoa.
Yeah, you don't even see snow. We see snow up to your knees sometimes. So
how do you live through that?
I'm really considering hijrah to Sydney. We'll see, inshallah.
Welcome. Do you have any memorable moments in Sydney with anything that has happened with a member of the Muslim community, the wider community, something memorable from your stay here?
Actually, last year I was here. The brothers, they took me to Blue Mountain, which is not that far, I guess, out from Sydney.
That's right.
And I actually shot one of my poem videos there.
Oh, wow.
It's a poem called Beautiful, where I'm on a mountain and you see like this, it's all about hijab and stuff like that. And people forever ask me, where was this from? Like, where did you shoot this? They thought it was like some local area in Canada. And I'm kind of excited to tell them, no, it's actually in the middle of nowhere in Australia. Like a place that, was so beautiful. Like, we went right after Fajr, we climbed this mountain, and you could see the fog and the clouds, and they were just like next to us.
Wow.
And it was such a beautiful view, and it was really time to contemplate on the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how beautiful He created this earth for us. So that was really beautiful. Alhamdulillah that I experienced that here.
Have you met any Muslim kangaroos?
I tried to give one shahada, but
Boonaa, is there anything else you'd like to add or advise to our Muslim youth out there?
Not really. I think that, alhamdulillah, there's a very strong upliftment and movement amongst the youth today. I would just tell them to always be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all that you do, and the fact that many of us, sometimes we try and separate our Muslim life and our school life and our home life and make them separate compartments, but the reality is that you're a Muslim 24/7. So Islam is here to guide the way you deal with your family. It dictates the way you deal with your friends, the way you deal with your coworkers, your co-students, everything.
It's a way of life.
It's a way of life, a complete way of life that we should try our best to adhere to and always seek knowledge. Always go out of your way and try and learn the same way that us young people focus and study for exams like there's no tomorrow. We'll spend all-nighters. How many of us would do that for the Quran? How many of us would pull up an all-nighter to study the tafsir of Ibn Kathir? Very few of us. We don't have that same drive to study the dunya. We don't have the same drive to study the akhirah as we do to study the dunya. But the reality is that the akhirah is forever, the dunya is temporary, but yet we apply much more pressure to one and not the other.
And just lastly, do you have any advice for Muslim sisters in particular? I know you have one of your spoken word pieces is about the Muslim women. Women, sorry. Do you have any advice to the Muslim sisters out there?
Well, I'm not a Muslim sister particularly, so I don't know exactly what advice they need, but I would just tell them, be strong and always remember that, subhanAllah, like sometimes brothers get put in the spotlight, and one sister I heard, she was telling one sheikh, why should I memorize the Quran? Because when brothers memorize the Quran, they get to become qari, they get to recite in these big tarawih, everybody recognizes them, but I recite and I just sit in my home. And we say, subhanAllah, ukhti, that's where the barakah lies, because you're not dealing with, the media and the spotlight and everything that you do in the comfort of your own home. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rewarding you for it. And it's like your own jihad, something that you have to struggle with. But inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you, and always make sure that, when you deal with the opposite gender, when you deal with brothers, like, there's a reason why our sisters are covered, our sisters are treated with dignity, with honor, respect, is because that's the way they should be treated. And we shouldn't lower our standards. Or there's this trend even of sisters, and I hope it's not like this in Sydney, where sisters are starting to look at non-Muslim guys, and like there's these children who are people who are being married, like half Muslim, half Christian.
Don't give our audience those ideas.
Yeah, no,
it's a reality, I think, because when Muslim sisters realize like the quote-unquote brothers out there aren't good enough, so they look towards...
and they start looking at, the culture can oftentimes interfere with that. Your parents might tell you, you have to marry Lebanese, you have to marry this, you have to marry... So you become so turned off from them, you just go to the opposite extreme.
And rebel,
you just marry some Chinese Buddhist guy, right? Because you just complete... But, I think that we have to put the culture aside. The Prophet ﷺ advised us to marry for 4 reasons, and we should always look to his example and what he did. And even if that means going against your parents, obviously, I can't say don't obey your parents. You have to obey your parents, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do. But you have to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first.
I think we're going to hit the ratings this week. Don't obey your parents, Boonaa said.
No, I definitely, like I said, no misquoting. Okay, obey your parents, but obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first.
That's
fear
right.
Allah, fear your parents, and hopefully you can please both at the same time. Inshallah.
Well, Jazakallah khair, Boonaa Mohammed, for being on the show today. We are honoured to have you on the show.
And inshallah, we'll see you for the hijrah. That's right.
Inshallah. Don't hold your breath, though.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. We'll take a short break, guys, and we'll be back, so stay tuned.
The YFactor.
Mountains of Mecca, what can you say of the day that Abraham passed your way, and he was instructed by God to build a house of peace where people will pray, and they will come on every lean camel and out of every ravine for the purpose of praising Allah, to glorify Allah.
Welcome back from the break, guys. Joining me on the YFactor is Altug and Ali from the Harun Yahya Tour. Welcome to the studio, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, okay, Ali, we'll start with you. Can you just tell me the background of the Harun Yahya Tour, just for our listeners who don't know?
Well, Harun Yahya is a pen name, in fact. His real name is Adnan Oktar. He's a Turkish scholar, devoted Muslim, who was born in 1956 in Ankara, Turkey. And starting from the years 1979, he devoted himself to communicate Islam. And so far, more than 32 years, he succeeded to write more than 300 books.
Subhanallah.
MashaAllah. More than 200 documentary films. So far, many websites, more than 800, I guess. They've been built along with his works.
So I believe the majority part of his works is about the scientific aspect of...
Not the majority, no. I mean, some of them are faith-related, and some of them are science-related issues, like the refutation of Darwinism, or the miracles in the living things.
That's right.
Evidences for creation, like the miracle of the ant, or the creation of the universe, or the creation of man, for example.
So those scientific aspects is trying to explore faith in a scientific way, is that right?
Definitely. Generally, when you watch a documentary film in National Geographic, for example, they tell about, how beautiful are animals and the way they live their social life. At the end, they make this conclusion, well, look at how Mother Nature created them. So this is just a deception. It is not correct. So the way, how Harun Yahya explains the beautiful aspects of living things is to explain them, and in the end, where you have to comment, Harun Yahya says, Allah created it, mashallah, supported with the Quranic verses.
That's
inshallah.
right. So it's a intelligent design / creationism theory of science.
Okay, intelligent design is something else. It's another concept that we have to distinguish. First of all, Allah doesn't need any design to create something. Allah just creates with His word be. So Allah doesn't need to,
like a template.
Doesn't need to process.
That's right.
For the creation. Allah creates in a way for humanity to think that there might be a design in that.
That's
inshallah.
Right. Okay.
So Allah created with His word be. So intelligent design is another movement, something else, originated from United States. So it doesn't have anything to do with the Harun Yahya works. Harun Yahya works are pure creation, inshallah, based on pure the idea of creation, inshallah.
Okay, so in your view, is evolution not allowed in Islam, or how does that work?
Evolution, from the very start to the end, is just a lie. It's just a pagan religion, not supported with any scientific evidence whatsoever. So it doesn't have any scientific credibility. It is supported by forgeries, and it is supported by some kind of psychological deceptive techniques. And it is supported by the overall worldwide atheist and materialist academic monarchy. So this is why, although we 100%, believe in creation, you cannot mention that in the universities. At least in my country, I don't know what's going on here.
Yep.
But in Turkey, in a biology class, you cannot mention about creation. You can't say that I believe in the theory of evolution.
It's just not accepted socially.
You can't pass your class.
That's right.
It. You're just dismissed. Similarly, the academicians, they are expelled from their work when they have to defend creation reality.
Well, obviously the length of the interview, it doesn't have the scope of going into details, but you said, for example, evolution is a lie, right? For the majority of our audience at university, at schools, they're learning biology based on Darwinism, based on the evolution theory, right? If they want to seek more information about this, and they want these ideas, they want to critically analyze them, where should they go?
Harun Yahya has many books about the topic, more than 25 books. Their levels are different. There are some books for the beginners. Meanwhile, there are some books for the advanced biology teachers or people who wants to debate.
So this has full evidence, so no rhetoric, like full evidence from the science field.
Full, pure evidence. When they visit harunyahya.com, there are different categories, and inside that they can see Darwinism and the refutation of Darwinism. On the other hand, there are unique websites dedicated for the refutation of theory of evolution, like darwinismwatch.com. So when they visit, especially darwinismwatch.com, they can see updated information on a daily basis. For example, there are answers to different media, like BBC or American Institute of Evolution, something like that. Turkish media as well. So those information are quite updated, so they can follow this.
Speaking of updated information, I believe that the Harun Yahya team sent a whole bunch of the outlets of creation to institutions. Can you tell me something about that incident?
More than 200,000 copies were distributed all around the world, including United States and Europe. In Europe, to France, to UK, Italy, Germany.
What was the aim behind that?
The aim is to show people that there hasn't been any change within species. Like you see an animal, a dragonfly, for example, and you see its fossil, which is aged more than 100 million years, and you see it's identical. There is no change at all, which means it's a perfect proof to show people that there hasn't been change, any evolution in the past whatsoever.
Was there any reaction received from the...
Oh yeah, the French media was they were shouting. They were yelling out. It's like an earthquake to our system to our ideology. It's like an atomic bomb that was put into our system. So all the media, like the major newspapers and the major agencies, media agencies, they reported just like a disaster.
Did you elicit
about the
a reaction
distribution.
from Richard Dawkins, who happens to be the father of atheism at the moment?
Richard Dawkins, of course, is an atheist. We have been inviting him for debate to Turkey, or we can go. We published advertisings in the major UK newspapers. Dear Mr. Richard Dawkins, we are willing to host you in Turkey, and we're going to cover all your costs.
What did he say? Yep.
And you're going to stay in a 7-star hotel. You're going to be perfectly comfortable and fully secured.
Yep.
We want you to debate Mr. Harun Yahya in a major TV channel.
That's right.
Okay?
Yep.
The answer was always no.
Oh, wow.
Otherwise, and not only hosting him in Turkey, but we said in that same advertising, we said that we can come to UK as well if you want.
Just to have this debate.
We can debate you there.
And he refused.
In your university, in your house, whatever you want.
Yep.
He just refused. He's inviting clerics. He's debating students. He's debating to some people that he can see that he can dominate, but he can't debate Harun Yahya.
All right. Well, speaking of Turkey, Altuk, you were saying that in your belief that Turkey is, as we know it, it's a very, very established secular country, right? One of the most staunch secular countries on earth. How did the movement begin in Turkey, and how has it come so far in a country that is supposed to reject the idea of God, the idea of creationism and things like that?
Actually, thank you for inviting us. Turkey is a very important corner, as center, an Islamic center actually, when you go back in time, because Ottoman is not the best model of Muslim understanding or moral values, but still in history, Turkey was the leader of
that's
Islam.
right, the legitimate base of Islam. That's right.
Islamic world.
Yep.
So that's why Europeans, the atheistic world, see Turkey as a kind of a bomb ready to explode or to collapse the atheism or the westernizing culture. So they were trying to keep Turkey always on sleep, or like a person
like drugged.
It was like this. Then Turkey was so secular, but atheistic secular, not like a secularism in US. The freedom of thought, freedom of speech in Islamic way or in another way was forbidden, or legally you wouldn't be able to introduce Islam 20 years ago. But what Harun Yahya did, he came with a scientific argument, not with direct religious argument, because it was so tough.
Because usually, this is not my view, but usually people see religion and science as paradoxical, like they just don't go together. Yes. So Harun Yahya showed that it does go together.
True. One of the most famous book of Harun Yahya is Quran leads the way to science. So the works of Harun Yahya is just to show that the Quran or Islam leads the way to science, because the scientific miracles in the Quran, as the Quran is not a book of science, but still there are many, maybe more than 200 scientific miracles that show that the science is not leading the world, leading the world to religion, but the religion, Islam, is the unique and the only religion that leads to science. Harun Yahya brought an argument which is very scientific with the solid proofs, and he removed the deception, the illusion in Turkey. So when he started to debate against atheism in Turkey, based from the surveys, according to the surveys, 60% of Turkish population were evolutionists. Then he has brought the books in 1985 and 1986. The first book was The Evolution Deceit. And the other book was the Zionism and Freemasonry. This book also became so famous, but the Evolution Deceit have been distributed maybe 10 million copies free of charge
in Turkey. What's the immediate effects of that?
Huge. It changed all the people's opinion about evolution theory in the classrooms, high schools, universities, when the professors were only educating the biology with the evolution-based understanding, but it's changed their point of view also. And Right now, the surveys are showing that the 97% of Turkish people are creationists.
Wow.
Only 3% left, 3 or 4% left.
Staunch.
Yeah, evolutionist. And also about the Atlas, one important thing is they take, the atheist world take this book very serious. Even Richard Dawkins.
The Atlas of Creation.
Yeah, because he takes the Atlas. We go to YouTube, you will see that. He takes it and 40 minutes he talks about Atlas. He takes it very serious.
So it's a legitimate challenge.
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
He tells to people that Harun Yahya is not, I'm not taking him so serious. He's not a scientist, he says, but 40 minutes, he talks out of it. Another thing, after we have distributed these big books, a very heavy one, the Atlas of Creation, is a collection of real fossils. In the world, there are 300 million fossils in all over the world that discovered. They all are the same as the living ones. Even one single of them are not the transitional
species
form or the intermediate form. The concept is to show that every fossil are the same with the living ones, or some of them are extinct ones, but fully formed, perfectly created, no missing form. No mutated organs. So when we show the pictures, solid ones, and the stones, the real stones, everybody have to accept them, and they accept. That's why they are taking them so serious. And European Parliament, first time in history, they gathered a commission just because of this book.
The repercussions of the Atlas of Creation.
Yes.
Wow.
They made a meeting for 2 hours, and 450 parliamentarians came together. They made a commission to reply, to write an answer to the book, because after this book, 2 months after, the students have started to talk about it and asking questions to their professors. And these are there are links about in the websites. The professors cannot answer to them. There are solid proofs, evidences.
So it's not an emotional response; it's a scientific, grounded evidence response to atheism.
Harun Yahya have asked from the evolutionists to bring one single intermediate form of fossil.
And they haven't been able to.
He will give $7 million.
Wow.
Yeah, US dollars to the person who will bring the fossil. But 3 years, nobody came. And then he replied, bring us one picture of an intermediate fossil, not a drawing. Because the evolutionists are drawing.
That's right.
And they have some cartoons.
Based on imagination.
Yeah. Even, I was in Melbourne Museum of the fossils. They have the same fossils of what we have, like the living fossils, so-called. And I've asked them the same question. What do you think? These are the same with the living ones. They said to me that there are people who can answer you. And I went them and I've asked. They tell that there are people we can forward you, but no answer. Still no answer. So it's a deception. And the concept became so successful in Turkey, changed the people's minds. So with other faithful believers in Turkey, in a very short period of time, people changed.
The discourse changed from atheism to creationism.
Now, in the schools, the creationism is there, not legally, not in the curriculum, but is there.
And more than that, the president of the European Council, she took the book, the Atlas of Creation, in her hand and said that they banned the book from high schools in France.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So obviously it's a very legitimate threat. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, both of you here. I think that we've learned a lot. And for our audience, again, you can visit the Harun Yahya website. I believe many of the Islamic bookstores in Sydney actually stock up a lot of the books. So go in and have a look.
Yeah, the following programs in Sydney have a couple of other talks, inshallah.
Conferences.
Conference.
Visit the Harun Yahya tour. There is a link on Facebook and we announced the event in the event section. So with that, again, I say thank you very much for coming to the studio.
Thank you.
Lovely
speaking to you.
Thank you very much. We'll take a short break and we'll be back, so stay tuned.
The YFactor.
Al-Khaliq made the oceans, rivers, lakes, streams and rain. Bow their waves in pure submission upon the earth to praise his name. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Welcome back from the break, guys. Joining us in the studio today is Mohammed Ibrahim, who is the head of the Australian Somali Community Association and who is also the coordinator of the drought relief effort headed by the Somali Drought Relief Organisation here in Australia. Welcome to the studio, Mohammed.
Thank you, Sister Tasnim and Miran.
Thank you. So why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about why Somalia in particular requires a drought relief effort?
At the moment.
As you can see from the media, there's about 12 million people affected by the drought. And there are daily assessment of where the worst affected area. And UN has already announced 2 regions in southern Somalia as one of the worst area, and they declare famine in these 2 regions. And there are 5 regions in total in central and south Somalia where the most people are affected, and that's where the people are fleeing from. And the reason for that is this area are not accessible by the UN organizations, and so there's no supply of food to those people, so they have to work 30 days or 20 days on the road by food to reach the refugee camps.
Right, and I think we did actually speak to someone from an organisation called Hadra, and they work with refugees that try to cross the border. But you were telling me earlier that there's a difference between the efforts of your 2 organisations.
Yeah, that's totally right. Our efforts are very much focused on internal Somalia, where the people are fleeing from, and there where the humanitarian supply are not reaching those people, mainly because of the political nature of the situation. But when the people cross the border, there are a number of organizations, including HADA, who are able to help those people. And our focus is the people who haven't able to make those refugee camps yet.
Okay, you just described a crisis of, famine and this, very, very horrible events occurring. So what exactly do you guys do on the ground? So, what type of relief are you supplying?
At the moment, our main effort is directed to those regions I mentioned, the 5 regions in southern Somalia, namely is Bai, Bakol, Lower Shabelle, Middle Juba, and Gedo. And these are the places where there's internal camps established and food are not reaching enough for those people. And what we do here, we work with the local agencies who are reputable and registered, and we rely on them. They are on the ground already. They are helping these people. They have been in Somalia for the last 20 years and doing a lot of charity work. So we work with those organizations, and then we direct all our efforts to supply whatever we collected from Australian community, and we direct to them, and they will do report and remittance for
What
us.
do you guys actually give them? Is it food or money, or what type of relief exactly?
At the moment, it's food because these people, they were working for 30 days, 20 days, and they reach internal camps like in Baidawa or places like that. And when they arrive there, the first thing they need to get is water and food.
That's right.
So that's where we're focusing now. But there's a need for medicine and also clothing and tent as for shelter as well.
Right.
So our main focus now food because according to UNICEF, there's about 2 million children malnourished and 500,000 of children now at the risk of dying. So our effort is to save lives.
That's right.
And that's where our efforts directed.
Okay, cool.
So for those of us who do want to donate, whether it's by food, and you were mentioning you'd prefer canned food, dry foods,
Yep.
Or whether it's medicine or whatever else, where do we direct those donations?
There's a number of ways you can help, you can donate. Cash donation can go to the Somali Drought Relief account with Commonwealth Bank.
And we'll post the details of those up on our Facebook page, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But if you want to read it out anyway.
Yep. So that's I'll just mention it briefly. BSB is 062234 and account number is 10408824, or you can post a check to PO Box 804 Lakemba 2195, Or if you want to donate food, medicine, or clothing, the food must be a dry food. Also, you can contact us on 0418 619 826 or on 9758 0089. Or you can email to us your details. We will contact you at admin@somaldroughtrelief.com.au.
Okay.
So if, for example, someone has like some food or clothes and stuff, if they ring up this number you gave, you'll tell them about the collection point and
yes, that's right. We will direct them where they can drop, and we're organizing containers to be shipped from Australia. Also, there are some containers shipped from Dubai.
Excellent.
And we hope in those shipments to leave those two ports next couple of weeks.
Inshallah.
At most.
So
just for our listeners out there, the number again, it's 0418 619 826, and the other number is 9758 0089.
That's right.
And something that you have mentioned on your flyers as well is that the donations, 100% of them actually go to the relief efforts. The volunteers are purely that, volunteers.
That's right. The effort we're doing here, everyone here is involved, volunteer. There's no money deducted to cover any overhead. And also we have the similar arrangement with the agency we're working. They are Islamic organization, they're reputable, and they also committed to us that there's no single cent will be deducted to cover any overhead costs. So 100% anything's donated will go directly to those who need.
Oh, mashallah, excellent. Well, Brother Mohammed, thank you very much for joining us in the studio today. Definitely it's something worth looking at because of the human catastrophe that's actually occurring in the region.
And for those of you who didn't catch any of those details that were mentioned on the segment, we will post it all up on our Facebook page, or if you want to send us an email directly at yfactor@live.com.au, we'll reply with the details so that you are able to send either the money or food or whatever kind of donations you'd like to put through to assist those in need in Somalia. And please remember that Ramadan is in a couple of days' time, so of course it's the month of charity, and the more you're able to give, the better.
Just one final thing I want to say before we end the clip. The other thing we're also doing that we're also organizing Ramadan sponsorship. Families can also sponsor a family in Somalia currently affected by the drought. $50 can help a family of up to 5 for a month of Ramadan.
Wow.
So also people can also opt for the whole month. Yes, just $50. So what I would encourage our brothers and sisters in Islam, so to dig and help those people in need, especially in the month of Ramadan.
So with the sponsorship program, they still ring that same number and then they inquire about the sponsorship?
Exactly.
Okay. One last time, the number was 0418
619 826, or you could call 9758 0089.
Okay, with that, thank you very much, Brother Mohammed, for coming. May Allah reward you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Salam.
Give a little of yourself. Cure your greed, purify your wealth. Look around at where you live. Look at all the good you have to give. Give a little of yourself. There's a hand somewhere to hold, a mouth to feed. There's so much that we can do for so many who are in need. Give our time, give our wealth, give our love, give ourselves. Know Allah sees each and every hidden deed. Give a little of yourself. Cure your greed, purify your wealth. Look around at where you live. Look at all the good you have to give. Give a little of yourself. Take a look at all the people everywhere who give with open.
That brings us to the end of the show, but Tasnim, I think you wanted to give a reminder about one of the events.
Yeah, just before we wrap up, the Harun Yahya guys we just spoke to actually have a talk tonight at the University of New South Wales. It's called The Big Bang and Materialism, and it'll be at the Lodge, Level 3 Square House from 6 to 8 p.m. So if you want to hear them again in live, in person, make sure you attend tonight. That was 6 to 8 p.m. At the Lodge, Level 3 Square House in the University of New South Wales.
And speaking of the University of New South Wales, they do still have their
no, this is the last. This is the last event in the Islamic Arts Week. But I believe the Cumberland Muslim Society campus has theirs
Islamic Awareness Week.
Tomorrow night will be the last one.
And I think Islamic Awareness Weeks will be happening in the other universities in Sydney over the next few weeks as well.
That's right. So I guess with that brings us to the end of the show this week. I think there's a lot to think about, and especially with our brothers and sisters in Somalia, please dig deep, donate. It is a month of Ramadan, so inshallah, the rewards are multiplied.
We also would like to wish you all a Ramadan Kareem, whichever day ends up being, inshallah, we still don't know. But I guess the next time our show is going to be on, it will be the first week of Ramadan. So.
That's right. So on behalf of the YFactor team, we say Ramadan Mubarak and Assalamu alaikum
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All we need to smile